I think I present myself as a Muslim because I felt so much shame in that presentation when I was younger. I used to walk back from the mosque through the hood and I was so afraid that people were gonna laugh at me or question why I was wearing a thobe. So I used to take the thobe and I used to tuck it into my pants as if I was wearing a dress shirt and jeans when I was 10 years old.
We zijn met de Paradiso backstage. Over een paar minuten komt straks hier binnenlopen een Canadees-Soedanese artiest en zijn naam is Mustafa. Mustafa moet je kennen. Hij is zo'n bijzondere artiest, want hij speelt met volk, speelt met systeemkritiek, doet dat vanuit zijn religie, doet dat vanuit de pure, oprechte artiest die hij is en hij reageert gewoon op de wereld die we vandaag de dag zien. Ik heb hem heel veel te vragen. Whose Lord are you naming when you start to break things? It's my only life you hold. And when you left me waiting, I thought, did you do it in the name of God? I have a few questions that I want to ask you, but before I go there, I want to get something out of my pocket. You know what this is?
Wow, yeah, Red Boy. It's a Red Boy, that's what we call it.
How do we call it?
It's Canadian $50, man.
Yeah.
Bro, this is nostalgic, that I would watch different drill videos from different hoods.
Yeah.
When the $100 bills...
This doesn't really happen that often.
I'm not gonna lie, something else happened in this water a couple hours ago, and someone told me that also doesn't happen that often. So now I don't know if this is just the thing you guys say whenever something strange happens in the water. But a father held his daughter out of the boat for her to take a shit.
Really?
Right here. It's a borderless city to people that are free.
You're really like a Toronto native, right?
Toronto has definitely produced me. It's odd though, because the hood is not designed for you to leave it, you know? So yeah, in some way I feel like I am very Toronto, but in other ways I feel like I'm very Regent Park, you know, because Regent Park felt like an island of its own, and it was in some ways, yeah.
And tonight you're going to perform in the Paradiso.
Yeah.
People, what I read is that they describe your sound as inner city folk.
And all of these street sounds, none of them will be yours or mine.
Well, you know, it's kind of like folk music born out of the inner city. You know, it's not like I'm trying to, you know, emulate traditional American folk music, because I think I'm as inspired by that as I am inspired by Sudanese folk music or Nubian folk music, or like, you know, it's just like we come from oral histories, you know, it's like we come from oral traditions, like nothing is written down, everything is memorized, even the way that we know our scripture. Like, you know, I grew up in a faith where everyone memorizes the Quran, so if ever all the pages are drowned and, you know, all the books are burned, like, there are people that can write it down again, and stories are passed down that way as well. And so I believe that, you know, a folk singer, like a folk artist, is an artist that is preserving the stories of their people, and that's what I do, you know. Like, my community is being gentrified, and the gentrification process is nearly completed. I shot all my videos there. I told all the stories about the community purposely, because I know that that is going to be the history.
Absolutely.
And so it's critical that that I'm holding the stories of the people that I loved, and I'm not making an assumption that someone else is going to hold the memory of them for me, you know? When I was younger, my sister used to write poetry, and instead of making me write lines, because you know when some write lines and, you know, they repeat the line over and over, she would force me to write a poem about whatever circumstance I was dealing with. So I'd get into a fight in the schoolyard, and she'd tell me, I want you to go and write a poem about it, and it was horrifying, honestly. Like,
why was that?
No, because it was, you know, it was, I dreaded it because I didn't want to have to look inward. And looking inward as a child is maybe, you know, the most anti-child thing to do, you know what I mean? It was like, it was the most anti thing to do in my youth, was look inward. I was only trying to see the world outside of my household, outside of myself, outside of my faith. I wanted to escape. And she forced me to look at myself. And I think because she forced me to look at myself, I became an artist, you know?
Where would you be without your sister then? As a musician, as an artist, in your role?
I don't even know if I'd be an artist. I don't know if anyone is destined to become an artist, you know, as much as it's a, I think the destiny happens in the living, you know. I think it's a thing that is acquired through maybe a suffering or through a circumstance or an inability to communicate. But that inability to communicate can only happen if you're living a life, and that initial form of communication is stolen from you or not granted to you, and then you find an alternative way to communicate, and then you become an artist, you know. But I don't know if someone is kind of like born with that inability to communicate with the world around them. I think, but in finding that you can't communicate with the world around you, I think then you become the artist, you know?
But how do you define your role as a musician, as an artist today, with all the different themes you use in your music?
I think I'm a journalist because, you know, I think that, you know, journalists are maybe not as celebrated as artists are, and I'm not kind of doing the work that, the extensive work that journalists are doing, but I do think that I try to report on stories and on lives
of the trenches
that are,
and
trenches that are undermined, you know, stories that are not told.
The time I never seen you, I thought you were on vacation, but you were sleeping in detention. Now it's you with the patience.
Another thing what's elemental is religion.
Yeah.
How important, I know that it's an essential, a key essential, but how important is your Muslim religion for your work?
I don't have a life without Islam, you know, like outside of the music, like everything that I do, like my day is dictated by prayer. You know, I have the Fajr prayer in the morning.
Did you pray today?
Of course. I mean, I've been praying 5 times a day since I was 12 years old. I haven't missed a prayer since I was 12.
5 times a day?
5 times a day since I was 12 years old. I've never missed a prayer. And it's like, and I pray travel prayers, but like, you know, I could tell depending on the sun, because there's the, you know, there's a prayer before sun rises, and then Dhuhr is when sun's angled, and there's the prayer right when the sun is directly above your head and you can't see your shadow. And the 4th prayer is when the sun is setting, and the 5th prayer is when the sun is completely gone. And so in that way, I'm kind of like aware of like the movement of the sun. I'm aware of the day, and it allows for me to capture and portion my day without it kind of escaping me. And I think a lot of my anxiety and a lot of even, you know, the depression that, like, you know, I've tussled with, it comes from me letting the day burn through me, you know? And I think Islam allows for me to take the day in
peace of mind,
and being just in rhythm and in harmony with the world around you. Yeah. It's a critical way of being in the world. You know, the only way to be in my body and to be in the world is to be, you know, tethered to the world around me. Like, you know, my will to live drops when I feel untethered from the world, when I feel untethered from nature, when I feel untethered from the people in my life. But Islam, it really makes me feel tethered to a community.
I love how you're speaking about that, man, because it's full of enthusiasm, full of love.
Yeah. I mean, I love my faith. You know, you start me there.
You
start me there, and I won't stop.
Man.
Wow. Yeah, you know, there's too much ostracizing happening around faith. There's too much. You know, I grew up with, like, you know, the depths of religious abuse and religious trauma, and
the tension as well, man.
Yeah, and I just want to be able to relay God and relay faith without it having to hurt, and without it having to feel like there is a world of guilt attached to it. And I know so many people grew up like that, and I just want to open the door to people that are coming in any capacity, in any form, and allow them to feel that they have a connection to a thing beyond the sky as well, you know?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there is tension. Unfortunately, we live in a world where there's this perspective and this this way about how Islam is being portrayed.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can imagine that in your way as an artist, in your work as a performing artist, there is some tension or there is some hate as well.
I mean, I think that happens within the Muslim community as well as outside of the Muslim community. I think, you know, the Muslim world has been abused relentlessly by imperialist powers, and those imperialist powers have justified their attacks on the Middle East and on Africa. And so if you think about the state of the Muslim world, predominantly Muslim countries, it's like, you know, their ability to live, their ability to sustain themselves, their ability to build an empire, you know, has been poisoned and plagued by the violence and the greed of the Western world. And when that produces another kind of violence or another kind of tension, people forget the origin of that violence. They forget the origin.
Where it started at.
Yeah, it's like everywhere, all the time, people forget the beginning. They always forget what happened to the person. You know, you look at even a homeless person on the street and no one ever thinks about what system could have brought them to their knees, could have brought them to the side of the road. People do not go there themselves, not on their own volition, not without someone pushing them there. And always we see people on the precipice of collapse, and we assume and we don't question the mob that drove them to that precipice, that drove them to that cliff. And I think in my music is all about context. It's all about contextualizing people's suffering. That's, I think, a part of my responsibility as an artist, is to contextualize people's suffering. So yeah, I think about that all the time, you know, and I think I present myself as a Muslim because I felt so much shame in that presentation when I was younger. I used to walk back from the mosque through the hood and I was so afraid that people were gonna laugh at me or question why I was wearing a thobe. So I used to take the thobe and I used to tuck it into my pants as if I was wearing a dress shirt and jeans when I was 10 years old. And so now when I'm on stage and I have a thobe on and people are cheering, I feel a thing that was robbed from me when I was younger.
And I've been the same since before she lived. Running to the past, running till I pass through you.
And it's funny that now there are Muslims who feel I shouldn't conflate, you know, some of this cultural wear with the music that I'm making. And so there's another community shaming me, but I'm no longer going to let people dictate how I present myself.
Just be you.
Whether it's within my community or from outside of my community, it's so important that I just present myself in the complex, contradictory, impossible nature in which the music exists anyway.
But it's important to stay resilient, right?
For sure, you know, and I think that, you know, I grew up in a neighborhood that made me resilient, you know, and you know, and there are so many circumstances that would have cost me my life. When I was younger, I had a gun charge, and I remember being in my cell and a lawyer coming to see me, and he said, you know, you're looking at 5 to 8 years. He said, minimum 5 years. It's the mandatory minimum for a concealed weapon. And I thought to myself, I'm 19 years old. Like, I'm gonna come up, I'm 24. I'm like, what kind of a life will I be living by then, you know? And so whenever I'm in like a discourse or in a tension with someone, or someone is critiquing or questioning something I'm doing, I think, there's no way you're gonna take 5 years from my life. No. So surely it can't be as bad as what I've survived. And it makes the situation lighter when I contextualize it, you know? It's all fine. I'm chilling, I'm just making music, bro. Music is a simple thing. I always tell my friends, bro, we're not doctors. Even when people tell me that, like, you know, oh, bro, the music changed your life, I think that I could be a compass. And that compass is going to lead them to the room that will change their life. But I myself am not doing it.
Yeah. So you released the track, Gaza's Calling.
Gaza's calling. It's been years since you've been back. You can keep what's in your hands.
I wrote Gaza's Calling about a young boy who grew up with me in the hood from the age of 10. And he came straight from Gaza to this really dynamic hood in Toronto. And I watched as what he experienced in Gaza made it nearly impossible for him to integrate into our community and into the school system and into another life. And he was the reason that I started to become curious about what was happening in Palestine. And because of him, I visited Palestine, and I went to Jericho, and I went to Riha's Jericho, and I went to Ramallah, and I went to Nasra, and I went to Haifa, and I was able to see firsthand, you know, the cruelty of the occupation and the oppression of Palestinian people. And that was in 2020. I wrote that song, and I held it for myself because there are a lot of songs that I've written that I hold for myself just as a capsule, you know, like a capsule for a memory that I think is important. Then I gave it to Nicholas Jar, who is a Palestinian Chilean artist who spends a lot of time in Bethlehem, and he produced the song in Bethlehem because I thought it was important that some of the music was produced on the land as well. But at this point right now, there is no question about how rampant and unforgiving this genocide has been. We're watching the collapse of the most critical world health organizations, from United Nations to Doctors Without Borders. Like, these are the organizations that we look to all matters. And when it comes to the matter of Palestine, we refuse to look to them.
I want to thank you. I believe in you.
Thanks, man.
Journalist with prophetic power.
I hope I get there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay authentic, man.
I'll do my best.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks, man.
Bless up.
Appreciate you.